Welcome parents and students to our reentry meeting. My name is Nakia Patton, and I am the principal of Cordova Elementary School. We can't wait to welcome back our students and parents to the school building. My admin team and I will be reviewing CES reentry protocols. We are asking you to mute your devices and to turn off your cameras during our presentation. We want everyone to be able to hear this important information. Also, parents, we would like for you to type your questions in the chat box. However, if you don't have access to the chat box, you will be able to use the hand raise feature or unmute your microphone to ask us questions at the end of the presentation. So please hold on to all your questions until we start the Q&A session at the end. Next slide. At this time, I would like to yield the floor to Dr. Tangston or Ms. Atkins or Ms. Woodard, if they are present in the meeting. They want to welcome our parents, teachers, and faculty.
Good evening, colleagues, to our amazing parents, students, teachers of Cordova Elementary. Thank you so much for coming out to be a part of our amazing meeting that Ms. Patton and the staff have worked so hard to put together. I see there's 78 slides, so there's a lot of great information that will be shared. I bring you greetings from Dr. Ray, our very own superintendent, Dr. Angela Whitelaw, our deputy superintendent, our assistant superintendent, Constantly Jones. We certainly want to take this opportunity to just say thank you for entrusting your child with us in their education. School has been in. We don't want people to think school is about to start. We've been in school since August, but we are opening the doors for our students to come back, and we want to make sure we come back a safe environment. So that's what the session will be about today, how we will re-enter into our building of Cordova in a safe manner where all will feel protected. So again, I say thank you for coming and welcome. And I know we're going to end this year strong. At this time, I will turn it over to our illustrious principal, Mrs. Patton.
Thank you, Dr. Tangston, for those kind words. Thank you. Parents, the purpose of this presentation is to provide an overview of the student reentry protocol and expectations for March 2021 at Cordova Elementary. Coronavirus pandemic has changed how we see the world. However, we know that we have to continue to keep our students safe, teach them, and provide social and emotional support through this incredible time. We have decided to re-enter our building and serve our students who have opted for in-person learning while continuing virtual instruction. Next slide. Our district is committed to providing the best learning experience for our students. As we look forward to implementing the plan for the rapidly approaching phase return to in-person classrooms in March, we must garner our responses and efforts to continue providing high-quality learning options to our students. The reentry plan will begin with the students who chose the in-person option. Next slide. Now, I know a lot of you are asking what to expect when schools reopen. First of all, we will make sure that we have safety protocols in place. Students will utilize their devices. We will make sure that we social distance when possible. We will continue to provide high quality instruction, and we will also continue to support our students socially and emotionally. Next slide. We will definitely make sure that we enhance health and safety protocols. We will start by making sure that we increase the cleaning protocols within our school building. All common areas will be thoroughly cleaned and disinfected at least twice per day. We will also have thorough cleaning and disinfection of all frequently touched areas at least 4 times per day. We will also make sure that we restock tissue, paper towels, hand soap, and hand sanitizers dispensers. We will also make sure that we put into place safeguards to limit the spread of germs. We will make sure that we utilize the temperature and health monitoring for all students, staffs, and visitors. Those with fevers or symptoms will not be allowed to remain at the school or at work. Isolation areas will be designated for those individuals. We also have social distancing markers in all buildings. We will reduce class transitions and we will reduce the visitor volume. At Cordova Elementary, we do have a high level of visitor volume. So this year we have to reduce some of that. So please be looking out for those mandates. We will also limit class interactions and huge gatherings. Hand sanitizer stations in all common areas and hallways. And we also will make sure that our students, our faculty, and staff wash their hands frequently. We will also utilize PPE equipment, face mask requirements for students, staffs, and visitors. We will also make sure that we have an emergency stock of PPE equipment at Cordova Elementary. Also, we have health and safety signage in all buildings, in the main building and in the annex building. We have social distancing floor decals throughout the school. We also have visitor entry guidelines, and remember, masks are required. We will continue to make sure that everyone wash their hands frequently. We make sure that we go over the steps to avoid germs, and we will also make sure that we reiterate to our students to stay at home when they are sick. Next slide. The pre-K department also have cleaning and sanitizing protocols. The early childhood staff will continue to routinely clean, sanitize, and disinfect surfaces and objects frequently touched, especially toys and games. Toys that cannot be cleaned and sanitized will be removed. Teachers will remove all the machine washable cloth toys. Students will not share toys with other children unless they have been washed and sanitized. All contaminated toys will be set aside until they have been cleaned. Sanitizing buckets will be provided. The cleaning process for the classroom toys will include using a cleaning, sanitizing solution with an EPA registered disinfectant. Next slide. So everyone, let's take a tour of Cordova Elementary. We will begin in the front office. There you see our lovely secretary, Miss Whalen. As you notice, she has on her mask, and on the other picture, you see a shield. That's it. That is our counter shield in the front office. It goes from one end of the counter all the way to the other end. That's one safety protocol we did put in place this school year. If you look a little closer, you do see we have the hand sanitizer container. We have 2 containers for pens unused and used. We have signage there, which will make sure that everyone will be social distance. And we also have a Raptor system that we will ask you all your 3 questions to make sure that you are screened daily. And we also have a thermometer on the wall in the office to check your temperature when you come into the front office. Next slide. Next, I have a picture of the hallways. If you look on the floor, you see the floor decals, and then the other picture is a picture of the walls. You will see our health signage on the walls throughout the buildings and on every hallway. Next slide. Here is an example of the classroom. There will only be 14 student desks per classroom, and all student desks will be 6 feet apart in the same direction. So that is an example of how your child's classroom will look. And then I also have a picture here of the desk shield. That is the example of the desk shield that will be on your child's desk. Next slide. Here you see our holding tanks, our large areas. You see the cafeteria and you see the gym. We set up these areas just in case we have an emergency and have to remove students from their classrooms. We have a holding space for them. As you can see, an example of how students will be sitting at a bench. They are 6 feet apart, and you see the desk shield. And then in the other room, you see we have a combination of desks and benches. Next slide. Here is an example of the markers that we have outside of our school. We have a lot of parents who drop off their students between 7:45 and 8:15. So if you come up to the school and you see that we have a line outside the door, because remember, we will be taking temperature, make sure you tell your child to find a white marker and stand there and proceed to go to the next marker until he or she enters the school building. Next slide. Temperature checks. The administrative staff will be checking students' temperature at every entrance. Masks are required. Students found to have an elevated temperature upon the first reading, they will undergo a second reading before being sent to the safety room. And I will discuss the safety room protocols later in this presentation. Parents will be called to come and retrieve their child immediately. The student will have to come back to school with a negative COVID-19 letter or a clearance letter from the doctor. Next slide. School personnel. All faculty and staff will return in the school building. Masks are required, even under face shields. We must wear a mask. Students will still learn via Teams. Teachers will stay with their students all day. Teachers will have their 30-minute duty-free lunch and their planning times. Teachers will only have 14 students in each classroom due to the 6 feet mandate. The other students will be monitored by a teacher assistant. Remember, earlier I stated that we have to lower our visitor volume. So visitors will be limited. Parents will not be able to eat with their child. Parents will not be able to visit a classroom. Parents must call the front office for an appointment, and visitors will be screened. Next slide. As of now, we have 319 students who will be returning back to Cordova Elementary, and I'm so excited about that. And then we have 400 students who still will be learning from the comforts of their home. All students will maintain their teacher of record, whether in person or virtual, so they will have the same teacher. If teacher returns to the building, student will be placed with that teacher, but it's not guaranteed. Say, for example, you decide to allow your child to come back in April, and his particular teacher already have over 14 students in his or her classroom. So it's not guaranteed that your child will go to her class. Your child might have to be with a teacher assistant, but remember, your child will continue to have the same teacher doing their daily instruction. Next slide. Ms. Robinson.
Okay, pre-K parent drop off and pick up. Due to health checks and questionnaires, students must be dropped off and picked up by an adult. Teachers will establish specific drop-off locations at each school for pre-K. Our entrance this year is in the same as it was the previous year. It is the kindergarten hallway entrance in the loop next to the annex building. Students will have staggered arrival and dismissal times for families. A suggestion is no more than 5 to 10 minutes, 5 students every 10 minutes, which it staggers 8 a.m., 8:10, 8:20, 8:30, etc. Social distance markers will be marked outside for parents waiting. As Ms. Patton stated, we have white markers outside of every entrance surrounding the buildings for drop-off as well as for parents to stand for pickup. Parents will not be allowed to enter the building. Teachers will scan students in and out of class using the Raptor system. The Raptor system will be added to pre-K teachers' laptops. Parents and students should wear masks upon arrival and dismissal. Teachers will have pre-populated forms with the health questions and parent signatures for sign-in each day. The pre-K team must perform a temperature health check of students before parents leave the premises. The teacher or assistant will check off students' arrival and verify their completion of the pre-populated health questionnaire. All students will wash or sanitize their hands before entering the classroom. Next slide. For bus riders, car riders, walkers, bike riders, daycare riders, and students who we don't have any students who drive cars, but for those students, parents will check students' temperature before leaving home. Parents will not be permitted to walk their students to class. Parents must become familiar with the drop-off times and locations. Car riders and walkers will be dropped off in the front of the school building between 7:45 and 8:15. Students will be required to wear masks at the bus stop and before entering the building. Students must stand 6 feet apart at the bus stop and while waiting to enter the building according to the school procedures. Students will sit in assigned seats on the bus. Siblings will be allowed to sit together. Students will be unloaded and enter the building according to school procedures, which is in the rear of our building, our back parking lot. Upon arrival, students will undergo temperature checks at the school. If students are found to have an elevated reading after 2 checks, they will be escorted to an isolation room and parents will be contacted to pick their child up. Students will be dismissed according to school procedures. Buses will be cleaned and disinfected between morning and afternoon pickup, between routes and end of the day each day. Next slide. Bus transportation and drivers. Bus transportation, students should practice social distancing at the bus stop and wear their masks. Students will return to their original bell schedules, and the school bus routes will remain the same as they did last year for our buses. Buses will be cleaned and disinfected between routes and at the end of the day. Students who ride the bus will be required to wear a mask. Next slide. Safety and PPE protocols. Dorm employees will be screened each day as they arrive to the work site. Dorm employees are required to wear disposable or clean, reusable masks. Buses will be cleaned inside with disinfectant spray twice daily between each route, AM and PM. Hand sanitizer will be available on all buses for student and driver usage. Bus drivers will be provided with additional masks for distribution to students as needed. Drivers will disinfect high-touch surfaces throughout the day. Drivers will ensure first row of bus is empty to ensure social distancing. Drivers will wear a mask while driving unless it is causing a safety concern, glasses fogging. Drivers will use gloves when touching surfaces that may be contaminated. Use a natural ventilation by opening the windows to increase outdoor air and indoor air when environmental conditions allow. Next slide. Safety and PPE protocols continued. Drivers will be required to wear a face mask face shield in addition to a disposable mask when securing wheelchairs, car seats, and seat belts. Temperature checks for students will be implemented at schools when students first arrive in the AM. We are looking into implementing seating charts for bus drivers to identify bus riders and to help with contact tracing. It is recommended siblings and students in the same household sit together. Bus pass files will be emailed to principals and designees. Transportation handbook, card stock, and bus rules will be sent via board mail. Your students will receive their bus pass on the first day of school to ensure that they get on the correct bus in the afternoon. Updated information will be uploaded to Leaderboard throughout the transportation reentry process. Next slide. Students will participate in brain breaks and go noodle breaks via teams as they do for recess. Playground equipment will be inaccessible. Water fountains will be inaccessible. Students will receive a water bottle during lunch and breakfast. They may also bring extra water bottles to the school. If weather permits, every effort will be made for students to have recess outside and ensuring social distancing. Next slide. End of class hallway transitions. At the close of the school day, teachers and students disinfect classroom supplies and materials. That includes the computer keyboards, desktop, calculators, etc. Class dismissals and end of day dismissals will be scheduled on a staggered basis and will include the 6 feet social distancing protocol. For our school, our staggered entry will be students in kindergarten, 2nd, and 5th will start to move at 2:45, and students in 1st, 3rd, and 4th will move at 3 p.m. Restroom breaks, lunch breaks, co-curricular activities will be scheduled on a staggered basis and will be aligned with the most current CDC and Shelby County Health Department guidelines. Next slide. Pre-K meals. Early childhood staff will continue to clean, sanitize, and disinfect surfaces for meal times. Students will eat all meals in the classroom. Eating times will be staggered with Group A and B, allowing only 2 students per table, utilizing all tables within the classroom. While eating, students will place their masks in labeled storage bags to limit exposure. Next slide. School meals. Expect a combination of grab-and-go meals, shorter periods, or lunch consumed in the classroom. For our breakfast and lunch, the students will consume their meals within the classroom, so we ensure that students are being social distanced. Virtual parents will still be able to pick up meals at the school sites on the designated days. Next slide, please. Bus riders, car riders, walkers, and bike riders, and also daycare riders dismissal. Parents will not be allowed to enter the building to pick up their students. Car riders and walkers will depart from the front of the school. Walkers will meet parents, siblings near the crossing guard. Students will be required to wear their mask as they exit the building to their awaiting cars. Parents for walkers will walk home. Parents will not be allowed to exit their cars or gather in groups while waiting for students to dismiss. Parents can't wait under the pavilion for their child. Bus riders will be dismissed from the 3rd grade hallway, which is the rear of our building. Daycare riders will be dismissed from the 4th grade hallway. Students must be worn properly. Students' masks must be worn properly before entering the bus, during the bus ride, and upon exiting the bus. Next slide. Classroom operations before, after school activities, or care. Y-Care programs will resume and follow the CDC and SCHD guidelines. Teachers and students will sanitize their hands prior to entering and leaving classrooms. and practice physical distancing when feasible. Small groups should include no more than 2 to 3 students. Teachers and students are required to wear face masks or face shields, and PPE equipment must be worn properly. Next slide. Before and after care programs will begin operation on the first day back of school, which is March 1st for elementary sites. We will have the YMCA operated at our site. Below is the information for registration as listed, which is ymcamemphis.org/SCS-BASC. Next slide. Bell times and dress codes. All school bell times will return to their original times for both in-person and virtual. Our bell schedule at Cordova Elementary School is 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. Students will not be required to wear uniforms during virtual learning. All in-person learners will be required to follow the SCS board policy on uniforms. If you are new to Cordova Elementary, we have the uniforms policy on the website. Next slide. Instructional spaces. Teachers will teach in their classroom via Teams. Specialists such as art, PE, music, library, and computer will go to the classroom to teach students. ESL, SPED, special education, and CLUE teachers will pick up students and take them to their classrooms. Gym will be used for car rider dismissal. Cafeteria will be used for bus rider and daycare dismissal. Next slide, please. Desks will be 6 feet apart, facing the same direction. Desks will have shields. There will be 14 desks in each classroom. Students will need to bring their electronic devices, chargers, charging cords, water bottle, and if they would like to bring their own lunch daily. Devices should be charged every night to ensure that they are ready for the workday each day. It's up to you, Ms. Glazer.
Okay, asynchronous learning days. All pre-K to 12th grade students will be engaged in asynchronous learning February the 22nd through the 26th. Students will engage in asynchronous learning on the following days as teachers help in-person students learn routines and procedures at school. That will be March 1st through 2nd for pre-K through 5th grade and March 8th through 9th for grades 6th through 12th. All school bell times, including iZone, will return to their original times for both in-person and virtual learning on March 1st. Bell times, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. Students will not be required to wear uniforms during virtual learning. All in-person learners will be required to follow the SCS board policy on uniforms. And as Ms. Robinson mentioned, that is on our school website. Student devices and classroom instruction. Students will bring their fully charged SCS devices and power cords daily. Students will bring their cleaned and disinfected headsets daily. Instructional content and curriculum will remain the same. Students with individual instructional technology needs will be assisted as needed. Sharing of supplies. Shared school supplies and shared storage space will be discouraged to the extent possible. Students will need their own school supply box. Daily. Virtual daily attendance processes will be as followed. Teachers will call roll using Microsoft Teams and record attendance in PowerSchool within the first 15 minutes of every class period. Parents must notify the teacher via email if their child will be absent. Instructional components. Regular instruction will occur parallel to distance and in-person learning, with social distancing when feasible. Teachers will use Teams. Quarantined and sick students will receive distance learning instruction. This is an overview in the day in the life of a teacher and the expectations for providing instruction. The purpose of this slide is to show the equity of in-person and at-home learning. All of the instructional practices are easily implemented via the Teams platform. Teachers are expected to use Teams to conduct differentiated whole group and small group instruction. All students have access to one-on-one to teachers during asynchronous learning times. The only difference in the at-home and at-school student experience is who is monitoring their work. Here are photos of what our classrooms will look like when we return. This slide provides overall guidance on synchronous whole group teaching. Highlight the differences in the hybrid model. Teachers cannot walk the entire room as they must stay in front of the camera so that students can see the teacher. Students need procedures for asking questions. Other parts of the lesson remain the same, including all of the instructional practices. Small group instruction has always been an expectation. However, in a hybrid model, teachers must ensure that students are ready for asynchronous learning before they release them. For example, teachers may want to develop a buddy system so that instruction will not stop when teacher is with a small group. The link at the bottom is an exemplar of what the virtual small group instruction looks like. The teacher is an SCS teacher at Southwind Elementary School, and that's the link that is posted at the bottom. Pre-K in-person learning, whole group. Teachers have removed all large carpets. Students will be divided into two groups, A and B. Teacher conducts lesson with group, or TA can simultaneously lead another group. Teachers will utilize outdoor courtyard areas for whole group experiences when available. Teachers will mark social distance seating areas. During story time, students will be spaced throughout the room to listen or continue with Group A and B format. Centers. Teachers will design and establish rules to accommodate no more than 2 students at a time. Directional markings will be placed on the floor walls to outline the traffic flow. Students will alternate in groups of 10 in centers. The remaining group of 10 will be divided into a small group. Asynchronous learning is essential for students to have the opportunity to practice recently learned skills or content. Here are a few examples of what students can do during these asynchronous times. It is important that teachers provide time throughout the day in addition to the time provided in the school designated asynchronous block.
When students return the first week of March, they will be experiencing what is known as a hybrid synchronous instruction model. This means that teachers will be providing in-person instruction to the students who chose to return, while at the same time providing distance learning for the students who opted to continue their learning at a distance. Next slide, please. Jobs in the classroom for classroom monitors and subs. The primary task of classroom monitors and subs is to support students in the classroom. However, they should be prepared to perform other duties as assigned by the principal. Teacher-specific and school-wide support include, but are not limited to, assisting with monitoring and supervising of students during school opening throughout the school day and during dismissal, assisting with taking attendance, helping students troubleshoot issues with devices, helping to monitor students during breaks, answering students' questions, assisting with monitoring students' grades, observing and reporting behaviors of students that would impact the well-being of others, and informing the appropriate school administrator and/or security personnel when emergencies or questions arise. Next slide, please. You may wonder what your child's daily schedule may look like if you have selected in-person learning. We are going to look at the average day of a hypothetical student named Lucy. Next slide, please. Excuse me, Angela. Between 7:45 and 8 a.m., Angela will travel to the school. Between 7:45 and 7:55, Angela enters the building and gets her temperature checked at the front door while still wearing her mask. Angela will then proceed to a designated area to eat breakfast, which could be the classroom or the cafeteria, and the school will practice social distancing to the best extent possible. Then, from between the hours of 8 and 11, Angela washes her hands before entering the room. Angela enters the classroom and finds her seat for instruction. Angela continues to wear her mask. Angela receives instruction from her teacher with headsets on, and she signs into Teams. The teacher may be teaching in person, or the teacher may be at home teaching virtually. I do think that all of our teachers, as we mentioned earlier, are now returning. Angela will receive synchronous and asynchronous instruction. Throughout the morning instruction, Angela will go to the restroom to wash hands. Between 11 and 11:30 a.m., Angela washes hands and eats her lunch in the classroom or designated area. After lunch, Angela washes her hands and returns to the classroom. 11:30 to 3:30 p.m., Angela will sign back into Teams with her teacher. Angela returns to the class for afternoon instruction. Angela returns to class for afternoon classes. And then from 2:45 to 3 o'clock, Angela prepares to go home and exits the building. Next slide, please. This here is a flow chart which depicts the same information on the previous slide. You can see that Angela begins at the bus stop, and then she arrives at school, and then she comes in. She has a time to come in and eat her breakfast. Then she has instruction in the classroom with restroom breaks and times to wash and a lunch break, and then finishes her day in the classroom before getting ready to go home and exit the building at 3 o'clock. Next slide, please. If you have selected for your child to continue their instruction via distance learning, this might be a typical day of instruction for them. 6:30 a.m., Karen wakes up from a good night's rest and starts her day. 6:45 a.m., Karen brushes her teeth, showers, combs her hair, and gets dressed for virtual class. 7:30 to 7:55, Karen makes sure to eat a good breakfast. From 8 to 11, Karen logs on to her virtual class. Karen receives instruction from her teacher via Teams. Karen receives synchronous and asynchronous instruction. And Karen takes stretch breaks between morning and class transitions. Then from 11 to 11:30, Karen eats a healthy lunch. And then after lunch from 11 to 3, Karen logs back into her virtual class. Karen receives instruction from her teacher via Teams, and Karen receives synchronous and asynchronous instruction. And at 3 o'clock, school is out and Karen is free to enjoy her afternoon. Next slide, please. This is a flow chart once again that presents a visual for you to see how Karen's day goes. She wakes up in the morning, prepares to get ready for school, brushes her teeth, gets dressed, has a breakfast, sits down and spends the first part of her morning with online instruction through Teams. Then she has lunch in the middle of the day, and then comes back for her afternoon classes before school ending at 3 o'clock where her day ends. Next slide, please. We have some social emotional learning supports for 2021. If your child is continuing to do virtual, the virtual SEL supports is that we have virtual check-ins with Tier 2 students, parents, and staff. We also do classroom guidance, virtual meetings with a mental health clinician, social worker. We can do referrals and Bright Bites, and also do individual and group counseling. We provide virtual student behavior interventions at the Tier 1 and early Tier 2 levels. We investigate cyberbullying complaints and state process, social emotional support lines and table of grief counseling, virtual services with parental consent to new and existing students and new Tier 3 students, reset rooms operating supports and interventions through MS Teams to include students' attendance, student searches, chronic absenteeism, and trauma sensitivity, virtual SEL, PD, and consultation sessions. We have a SEL curriculum pilot and district planning, and we provide registration and enrollment for homeless, truancy, displaced. We have restorative practices, chronic absenteeism, homebound, custody, and POA support. In-person supports, we will resume in-person SRT check-ins with Tier 2 students and parents, and staff meetings with a mental health clinician, social worker, doing Bright Bites referrals, group and individual counseling with students, and district and school PD consultation sessions. We'll provide virtual behavior interventions at the Tier 1 and early Tier 2 levels, investigating bullying complaints and following the state process. We have social emotional support lines and in-person and therapy, telegrief therapy for crisis counseling and grief counseling. Those receiving Tier 1 and Tier 2 services with parental consent to new and existing student and new Tier 2 students. We have reset rooms operating in person at all sites. Reset presents at schools available during school hours, supporting students impacted by the pandemic and or other SEL competency needs. We have the SEL curriculum pilot, PD, and planning for district-wide implementation for 2021 and 2022 school year, and providing registration and enrollment for homeless, truancy, discipline issues, restorative practice, chronic absenteeism, homebound custody, and POA support. All right, Ms. Hibler.
Pre-K, early childhood. These next slides will give more detail about in-person learning for pre-K students. Pre-K, parent drop-off and pickup. Due to health checks and questionnaire that must be completed daily, students must be dropped off and picked up by an adult. Teachers will establish specific drop-off and pickup location for pre-K students, approved by the principal or center director. Arrival and dismissal times will be staggered for students' families. The recommendation is no more than 5 students every 10 minutes. An example is 8 o'clock, 8:10, 8:20, and 8:30. Social distance markers will be outside for parents waiting to drop off and pick up students. Parents will not be allowed to enter the building. Next slide, please. Teachers will scan students in and out of class using the Raptor system. Parents and students should wear masks upon arrival and dismissal. Teachers will have pre-populated forms with health questions and a space for parents' signature during sign-in each day. Student temperature and health checks must be performed before parents leave the premises. A student or an assistant will check off students' arrival and verify their completion of pre-populated health questionnaire. All students will wash or sanitize hands before entering the classroom. Next slide, please. Early childhood staff will continue to routinely clean, sanitize, and disinfect surfaces and objects that are frequently touched, especially toys and games. Toys that cannot be cleaned and sanitized will not be used. Machine washable cloth toys will be removed. Students will not share toys with other children unless they are washed and sanitized before being moved from one group to the other. Toys that children have placed in their mouths or that are otherwise contaminated by bodily fluids will be set aside until they are hand washed by someone wearing gloves. Specially marked sanitizing buckets will be used for soiled toys and kept out of reach from children to prevent reuse. The cleaning process for toys will include washing with water and a cleansing solution, followed by rinsing and sanitizing with an EPA registered disinfectant. The items will be rinsed again and air dried. Next slide, please. Whole group. All large carpets will be removed. Students will be divided into 2 groups, A and B. Teachers will conduct lessons, Big Experience 1 or 2, with each group, or the TAs can lead another group simultaneously. When available, teachers will utilize outdoor courtyards and/or areas for whole group experiences. Teachers will mark social distance seatings. During story time, mostly Big Experience 3, students will be spaced throughout the room to listen or continue with group A and B format. Centers. Teachers will design and establish rules to accommodate no more than 2 students at a time. Directional markings will be placed on floors or walls to outline the traffic flow. Students will alternate in groups of 10 in centers. Remaining students will be placed in small groups of 2, or they will participate in individual activities. Next slide, please. Pre-K meals. Early childhood staff will continue to routinely clean, sanitize, and disinfect surfaces for mealtime. Students will eat all meals in the classrooms. Eating times will be staggered with groups A and B, allowing only 2 students per table, utilizing all tables within the classrooms. While eating, students will place their mask in a labeled bag to limit exposure. Next slide, please. Students or staff test positive for COVID-19. Reporting cases of COVID-19, protocols and procedures. In preparation for the reopening of schools for in-person learning, Shelby County Schools has implemented extensive procedures to address positive cases of COVID-19. This process includes investigating schools and mitigating a plan of action to protect students and employees. SCS follows all appropriate protocols for reporting cases based on Shelby County Health Department guidance. Examples are self-reporting for families or staff. The parent or guardian or employee reports positive case to the school principal or site administrator. The principal or site administrator notifies the Shelby County Contact Tracing Team and initiates in-school contact tracing. Shelby County Contact Tracing Team reports the case to Shelby County Health Department to implement mitigation strategies. The other example would be Shelby County Health Department notifies SES of a confirmed case. Shelby County Health Department notifies the SES contact tracing team of a confirmed case. SES contact tracing team notifies the principal or site administrator of the confirmed case. The principal or site administrator initiates in-school site contact tracing and implements mitigation strategies. To report a case or ask questions about contact tracing, parents should contact their schools during regular hours. The principal should identify the phone number and email address for parents to contact to inform both during and after school hours. Ms. Doss?
Okay, thank you. Exceptional Children and Health Service Reentry Plan. Next slide, please. Reentry support for teachers and teachers' assistants. Face-to-face support will be provided weekly to SPED teachers and SPED assistants in each class by DECHS Central Office staff. Advisors will share contact information, phone number, email address, etc. with all SPED teachers and SPED teacher assistants. Central Office SPED staff will deploy to assigned schools. Behavior consultants will be assigned to classes with students requiring behavior and social emotional support. Collaboration of DECHS Central Office staff with school administration to determine specific areas of need for SPED teachers and SPED TAs. Next, please. Virtual IEP support. SPED managers and advisors have served as LEA during virtual IEP meetings and consistently monitored the progress of students with IEPs. A virtual IEP meeting guide was developed and shared with SPED teachers receiving training. DECHS acquired a DocuSign contract to provide all staff with an account to obtain signatures for virtual IEP meetings. Teachers of low-incident self-contained classes received additional funding to provide learning boxes with instructional materials, supplies, and manipulatives to use as a supplement to their virtual instruction. School nurses have participated in IEP meetings and provided virtual services for students with disabilities who have individual health care plans. Next, please. Exceptional students return to the building in social distancing guidelines. Advisors will visit classrooms, check for proper spacing, and work with the school administration to ensure social distancing guidelines from the district are being followed. Next, please. Safety on the bus and in classrooms. Additional PPE will be made available to staff and classrooms with students who have unpredictable behaviors, are medically fragile, and are physically impaired. Ongoing collaboration regarding specific seating plans and safety PPE protocol developed by transportation. These guidelines will be followed. SPED staff will assist in guiding students to the school's COVID-19 screening checkpoint after exiting the bus. Next, please. Return stronger. CLUE services. CLUE service. Our CLUE students will be served in their assigned schools and will not travel to CLUE centers. The CLUE teachers will travel instead to those students who have chosen to attend school in person and use the virtual Teams platform for the students at the school who will have remained virtual. In-person CLUE students will travel to the teacher's classroom. At this time, transportation will not be provided. Back to you, Ms. Patton.
Thank you. Now let's talk about the safe room protocols. Next slide. Individuals who present symptoms will need to be evaluated and isolated for a short period of time in the school's safe room until the person has been dismissed. We will also complete a safe room checklist. The school's safe room checklist is a list of recommended measures on how to approach possibly infected faculty, staff, and students during the COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide. In order to make sure that our safe room was safe and secure, we had to do the following. We had to make sure that our safe room was near a restroom. And at CES, our safe room is right next to a restroom. We had to also make sure that we had proper signage in our safe room. We also have extra PPE equipment. We have a sink with water, warm and cold water. And we also made sure that we had desks that are 6 feet apart. Parents, I also want you to know that the administration team and the nurse will be the monitors during the safe room. We are all trained. We are trained on how to protect ourselves using PPE equipment. We are trained in the HIPAA mandates. We are trained on how to use the thermometers properly. We know the importance of social distancing. We are trained in how to properly clean and disinfect areas. We also know when to call parents and guardians, and also when to contact health services. Next slide. Also, parents, I want you to know that we will make sure that anyone entering the safe room maintains and uses appropriate PPE, that's personal protective equipment, and that we follow safety guidelines. We will make sure that we complete the appropriate incident reports for anyone entering the safe room. The parent or guardian will be immediately notified of the status of their child upon the student's entry into the safe room. So for example, if we have to take your child to the safe room, we will notify the secretaries in the office and walk your child to the safe room. The secretary will notify you that your child is in our safe room. We will ask the parent or the guardian to immediately pick up their child from school and seek medical attention. We will also communicate to the parents to follow emergency medical protocol if conditions are warranted. We will ask parents or the guardian to provide medical clearance prior to returning their child to school, but you have to have clearance from a health care provider. And parents, I want you to know, we will not place face coverings or surgical masks on anyone who is unconscious or has trouble breathing during the time they are placed in our safe room. Next slide. Once the student, faculty, or staff has left the safe room, our custodial staff will clean and disinfect the safe room. Next slide. Okay, parents, I know we have talked a long time tonight, but we want to make sure that you were informed on our protocols here at Cordova Elementary School. And hopefully we have communicated a strong case for you to allow your child to come back to school in person. So let's review how to update student learning options for return in-person learning. Parents, you can do it 2 ways. The first way is you can visit the school. Parents can visit the school to change or update their child's learning option, and the staff will assist them. Or parents, you can call. Parents can call the school instead of visiting in person and change or update their child's learning option, and the staff will assist them. The school will complete the form with parent over the phone or in person. The school will enter in PowerSchool to update the student learning option. If needed, the school staff can have a full day to complete the data entry process and plan the student's return to in-person learning. The parent should be, and let me add, will be informed of the date the student will attend in person by school. Parents, if you have any questions about PowerSchool enrollment, you can contact the SEED office at 416-6007. Next slide. Parents, Here is an example of the form that you will have to complete if you choose to change your child's option from virtual to in-person or from in-person to virtual. Student name, paraschool number, school name, some questions about IEP, how is your child eligible for transportation services due to their IEP, your school option, and parent signature. Next slide, please. But parents, before you do that, we must verify a few things. The secretaries will have to verify if you are the parent or legal guardian. You have to be listed in PowerSchool. That's what we're going to check. So make sure you are the parent or legal guardian. We will not allow grandparents or siblings to make this option change. You must be the parent or legal guardian. We also have to verify that you know your child's PowerSchool number or the last 4 digits of his or her Social Security number. You must also verify the date of birth and the address on file. Next slide. Here's an example of PowerSchool, and our secretaries will go into PowerSchool and change your child's option. Next slide. The coronavirus will not defeat us. Everyone, we all know that Memphis has seen its share of epidemics and pandemics, and you see them listed there. They were eventually conquered by public health initiatives and a vaccine. The aftermath, however, gifted our city with the determination, grit, endurance, and a strong sense of community that defines us today. There is comfort in knowing Memphis has seen worse and not only survive, but thrive. And I want to let you know that's what we will do during this pandemic. The coronavirus will not defeat us. We will strive, we will thrive through it. We have a mantra at Cordova Elementary, and it is, we will, we can, watch us. Next slide. Parents, if you want to know more information about the district reentry plan titled Return Stronger, next slide, you can find the information on the SCS website. They have the Safe Plan review there. They have videos, and they have a lot of good Q&A question and answers there as well. Next slide. Okay, parents, it is now time for our Q&A section. We're going to start with the chat box. Ms. Robinson, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have any questions in the chat box at this time?
No, we do not.
Okay, parents, do you want to ask us any questions? You can use your raise hand feature or you can unmute your microphone.